This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. And our first order of business will be a call to order by roll call. Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Mike Lawson.
Present.
And Keith Bergman present. Rich Feely and Carrie LaFleur are not present. Rich is away till I think 2 weeks from now. And Carrie is out of town, may or may not be able to call in. And welcome all. First item, or the next item on the agenda, is approval of minutes. And I had sent out to the trust members sets of minutes from July 18th and July 1st. And all three of us who are here today were at those meetings. So we could take
I
a
move the approval of the minutes as distributed.
motion by Mike to approve the July 18th and August 1st minutes. Is there a second by Linda?
Second. Yep.
Second by Linda. Is there discussion? All right, then let's then on that motion to approve the minutes. Linda,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and Keith, aye. So that passes 3-0. Thanks very much. Next is the main event, which is to prepare for the August 28th select board meeting, when they will be discussing a draft spending plan to implement housing production plan production strategies. And just as background, the way this came about is that I think our original hope had been that if all of the housing roundtable boards could convene together when we met on August 16th, then that would be a place where we could get direction from everyone and go forward. And we certainly have a lot of input. We have a lot of things on the plate. But we did not have a quorum of the select board there. There were 2 members, and we had originally scheduled the date at a time thought to be convenient for the chair. Turned out not to be. So so I reached out to the chair and asked for time to bring that discussion to the select board, and was given 15 minutes on August 28th. So for that, we are here today to finalize whatever we might like to bring forward to the select board for a vote. And I do think there is a vote that is appropriate for us to get from the select board as the trust, and it is a the select board approval of a policy statement, which they've done before, and which our bylaw does say our policy statements that we develop are subject to select board approval. So that so what I've been trying to do is to think about how to frame all of the work that we've done thus far in the form of a proposed policy statement for the select board to approve. And I think I've come up with a strategy, and it's as follows. We're not actually, well, let me back up. The reason, and as I explained to Henry, the reason why we're doing this in August at all, much prefer to have taken the summer off, but we're doing it in August because it's a September 8th deadline for the once-a-year opportunity to apply for Community Preservation Act funding. So mindful of that deadline, we wanted to make sure we got everyone together. We saw what all of the projects were that were on the table, and then to figure out a way to program the use of our funds at the trust to determine, especially from the trust standpoint, whether we want to go after additional funds, which we understand from Kerry LaFleur could now be from applying to the select board for town ARPA funds this fall, as well as part of the town's annual capital plan process, as well as applying to the CPC by their September 8th deadline. And there's Kerry. So I'll take a breath and a drink of water, and then welcome Kerry. There she is. She's on camera. All right. Well, thanks very much. So Kerry LaFleur, present. Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much. Great to have you here. I'll do a quick recap, which is that for our allotted time at the select board agenda on this coming Monday night, August 28th at 7:45 p.m. we have the opportunity to get important policy direction from the select board. And so I'd like us to think about how we should best frame that. And given all of the work that we've been doing in recent months to pull together the status of projects that might be ready to go forward to implement housing production plan strategies, and ultimately to see how far does the money go, and what kind of money do we want to look about applying for in the future. And I was just saying, Kerry, that from the news that you gave us at one of our last meetings, it appears that in addition to applying to the Community Preservation Committee for housing funds, the trust might be able to at least apply for through a town process for ARPA funds this fall as well. So that's great news, and I think that provides us an opportunity to to try to move ahead. So I have a suggestion on how we might want to proceed tonight, and it is to see that if we could think about a trust policy statement that says the following. First, that we've identified certain projects which appear to be ready to go either this fiscal year, 2024, or in the near future, and that we would like to be inviting those projects as they become ready to go to apply to the trust for funding. It's not a guarantee of any dollar amount because in some cases the potential applicants don't know yet what their dollar amount might be, and not to speak on behalf of CHDC, but they will know more when they issue their RFPs and have specific proposals in front of them of what funds are needed to proceed on some projects. And that there may as well be a category of things that we know are on the radar screen, things that we want to be able to jump on as soon as they happen, but it may not be until either later towards the end of next fiscal year, or maybe even the following year. And I would submit a couple of projects that I think fall into that category are funds that the select board may need to fund a host community agreement with the 40B developer. I think they ought to be able to come to the trust for those monies and not have to wait a year and go to town meeting. And secondly, that if the town's efforts with the lieutenant governor pan out to be able to acquire the surplus state property at 91B Main Street, if that for less than market value, if that goes forward, the trust ought to be setting aside some amount of our money for so that it's available. From a policy standpoint, though, and on both, and I don't think it's to the town's advantage to attach a dollar amount to a specific project. But rather, we might want to think about attaching a dollar amount to a category. That is, how much money do we want to make available for applications that we want to invite, or that we expect to be able to invite in the coming months. And then a further category of how much do we want to make sure that we set aside, that we reserve for things like the surplus state property or the 40B negotiations, which will require some funding. I think it may be to our advantage to just say in the latter category to just come up with a number. Is it $1 million that we set aside and then it's for any number of projects, as opposed to setting aside a specific dollar amount for any one, lest the a developer see their name next to a dollar figure. So anyway, so that's an approach. Mike.
I like it. Two questions come to my mind. One, why would we need to split sort of projects that are ready and projects that might be ready? I mean, can't the proposal to the select board just be, as you said at the beginning, projects that are ready or may come ready out of sequence with the town meeting, which would be alternative sources of funds? And we could just give categorical examples of,
Yeah.
those that we know are kind of ready right now, and
Yeah.
then things that might pop up.
That's a great suggestion. I mean, there's no particular reason why we wouldn't do that. I think in our discussions, we'd want to have in mind who are the ones that are most likely. Well, and I don't know, and maybe I'm misjudging it. Maybe we actually won't know who the first one is that's ready for an application. I'm assuming it'll be CHDC for something, but it could be the state, or funding the state acquisition or whatever. So that's I think a fine suggestion.
I also agree with you that I wouldn't attach any dollar amounts to anything.
Yeah,
We haven't gotten proposals for anything, so I
right.
think we would want to suggest anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, and I'll share my screen, because the breakthrough for me was when I was thinking about how do we approach this, is this. The breakthrough for me was, all right, well, let's just check a box without and then just have totals for the categories. Like if and by this one, it's like, what do we want to, of our $3.1 million, which at least in my thinking, check off the box for those which we expect to invite this year, check off the next column for those that we might be the following year, or the ones that we think aren't going to be ready soon, which might be realistically might be Junction Village, but who knows. But yeah, it's like it could just be one but what this breakthrough for me did was, we don't want to see a specific dollar amounts for a project. We just want to see which ones are we thinking about as coming forward, and then a total amount of money that we think might be available. So Linda?
Yeah, I couldn't, thank you, by the way, for all the work and preparation for this particular meeting, with all helping us think through these charts and so forth. I couldn't agree more that I think it's dangerous to be attaching specific dollar amounts. And I'm even a little leery of coming up with totals for categories, because I think the bottom line is that we need the flexibility, depending on what moves forward faster, what's ready, and so forth. My other caution is, if I understood your original suggestion for the motion to consider, is that I believe it included some phrasing to similar to invite all applications to apply. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering about what message that sends.
No, I guess my specific proposal, and what I'll do, I had circulated a
Just,
work.
first and foremost, we want them thinking about CPC, right? Should,
Well, I don't want, well, can I say that I'm thinking about CPC, and I think that it's, I mean, one of the concerns I had when the CPC had an application process and we didn't, and we still don't, but is who's, are people just going to stand? We're not going to know who's I think everyone ought to put on the table who's applying for what housing funds, unless it's a private developer, unless it's some non-town entity that's involved. If all of the town groups can't get together and share information and strategize and get policy direction from on high about who's going to be going after limited housing funds. But in any event, yeah.
I'm sorry, were you finished or?
Well, I wanted to put up just to answer the.
I would just like to follow up
Sure,
a
yeah,
comment before we move on. Albeit I couldn't agree with you more. The strides that have been made in terms of working together with all of the housing groups and doing and beyond at this point, other groups as well, doing our best to understand their needs and also represent them in our discussions from the trust as we move forward. And I think that's a real step forward and very important in terms of us all being on the same page. At the same time, I did sit because I'm liaison to the CPC. I did for the select board. I did sit in on both of those conversations, one of which I think you were present at, and one of which you may not have been present at, where the CPC took on the discussion of whether or not they might entertain coming up with some kind of budgeted amount for the trust and so forth. And both times I heard significant pushback in terms of them wanting to hold on to the, I'll just call it their local committee control, in terms of being able to balance community housing requests against their other categories that they're indebted to fund. And I thought what that was, I didn't take it necessarily as a slap on our wrist or in any way. I took it as that made a lot of sense in terms of the task that's before them. Now, at the same time, I also heard, I heard you representing the trust saying, it would, but we don't always have the specifics in hand, especially by September 8th, right? But we need to be able to support the projects that are coming forward. And we might have heard the outcome of that differently. So I'm going to let you speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Linda, and I agree wholeheartedly with the CPC's feeling that they have competing uses for CPC dollars. It's not just housing; they have to balance recreation, which I guess is going to be reportedly is going to be one of the big asks for them, and open space and historic, and that we're just one of four and that categories, and that's fine, and I get that, and I can understand why in the long term, or why on an operational basis it would really be, well, it's year by year. You need to see who else is asking for what and what I would say in what other categories. The thing I would like to avoid, however, is housing projects competing with housing projects. I mean, I was going into the meeting with thinking that, or today's meeting thinking that, well, we should vote to request, say, $500,000 in CPA funds in the September 8th round, or some number, pick a number, could be 400,000. Just so we're in there and we're keeping hope alive, and would give us the opportunity to address the issue that CPC talked about at their last meeting, and that had been discussed with Lee Smith and me when we met with the CPC chair, which is that was that we might want to have a sort of a ask to get have the trust get a lump sum of money for which we would need to go back for a vote of the CPC, not town meeting, to release funds for a particular project. That is, that they would somehow be involved in it and not simply writing it off to the trust. So that's one way or another, I think we ought to look at that. Carrie, you have your hand up.
So sort of in the same direction, at the roundtable, there was some discussion about the rental assistance and the emergency assistance, and in conversations with some select board members, there seems to be not unanimous support for using trust funds for those purposes, but the CPC money could be used for those purposes. So I think it would be helpful to understand if we're going to get some policy direction from at least this board that says we shouldn't be dabbling in those rental programs, then maybe we would want to support those requests for CPC funds for that purpose, if we see that as a significant need in the community.
Thanks, Carrie. I'm going to call on Liz in just a minute, but as I was thinking about this over the weekend, it occurred to me that there's a simple, I often go back to how we did things in Littleton. Not as often as how we did things in Provincetown, but in Littleton we had a rule. The select board and the finance committee had agreed on the simple truth that recurring revenues, that's one-time revenues, are for one-time expenses, and recurring revenues are needed to fund recurring expenses. And I would submit that anything that we do on a capital basis is a non-recurring expense for which we can use what we have, which is only we only have non-recurring revenues. And that if there were to be a commitment to a housing, so if there were to be a commitment to a rental housing program or not, if there was going to be such a commitment, we're not what do we do when we run out of money and the people that are living in the rental housing can't, that we're just telling them, we can't help you anymore because we don't have a funding source. So maybe so I'm intrigued by the idea of having certain housing projects that are recurring revenues be funded by recurring sources. So anyway, and Liz, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right time, but I think it's interesting to pull all of the housing requests and funding together in this way, and certainly it's taken a lot of time and energy, and thank you for all that. From the CHDC's perspective, I just don't know if they understand or if there's enough clarity on how the decisions would get made. And given that, so I think they're thinking that they're going to apply, because they sent you all a memo, right, of their requests with dollar amounts, right? And but there's no decision, kind of, like, I don't really know what your decision is, so I think that the items that are CPA eligible, they're thinking that they might have to apply to CPA also, because in the event that you don't fund them, right? Like, they're looking to get funded, so they're trying to go somewhere, right? And I think that they would prefer, and I know that Lee has talked to you about this, would prefer to fund Assabet River Bluff through the trust. That's their preference. It would delay the project to wait for CPA. But the process that you're talking about, it's not clear to them, like, how that commitment would get made so that they wouldn't put their application in for CPA. They don't want to find out that they got nothing, right? Like, so it's just not clear, like, how it comes to a decision point for the requesters, I guess. In particular, that because, you know, I work very closely with them, but I know that others have the same kind of question. I think that you're getting there, but I'm just not sure that I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually what you're suggesting is that if we thought September 8th was bad for CPC applications, that the trust needs to be months and months and months ahead of that in order for someone to come to us rather than CPC. Because that's,
Well, I think they feel like you asked for their memo and they provided that. I mean, they can
well,
provide.
but we have not, but we don't have, I'll tell you, we do not have an application in front of us for which we can approve $1.5 million. And why? Well, because we don't have an application process yet. We're still waiting on that. And even if we did, I'll be interested to see what the CHDC's application looks like to the CPC for $1.5 million in funding, because if you have that much information, they're no slouches. They're going to require a lot more than we required in the memo you sent to us. So the amount of work that you're going to have to do I'll just see what that application looks like. I don't know if it's and I guess we can discuss how useful it is to have two boards like that reviewing the same thing, but I guess that's your choice.
Just
Is there
another.
any direction that you have to the CHDC about that? I mean, should they apply to I guess they should apply for both. I mean, I just don't.
I wouldn't
I'm
recommend.
just I just am a little confused about the process.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that, but then I can't because I think it's a waste of the CPC's time. But if we get a policy vote, and we'll see what the rest, I mean,
Okay.
You don't even have a vote from this board now, so we'll have to see how the other three
Perfect, thank you.
stand. But if there's general support for inviting an application for the CHDC, that's why I wanted to put it in the motion, at least, to say let's invite. And I am going to share the screen now to show the where is that?
A quick technical clarity from Liz before you do that.
Yeah.
Liz, the emergency home repair program is not eligible through CPC, correct?
The small grants program, you mean?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Small grants program.
That is not eligible through CPC, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think either the emergency rental assistance, in my opinion, is either.
I don't think that is either.
Yeah, the rental assistance program would be, but not the emergency one. As I currently understand, there's some requirement that they don't quite have in place for that other one. So I don't think that both are the same in terms of their CPA eligibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and
for whatever that's worth. Right?
Yeah, and since we're talking about other projects, $500,000 for a farmhouse addition, that there goes. Is that a housing expense? Is that eligible for?
I believe that it would be. I mean, I've spent some time on this project over the last 6 months with the town. I do think it's CPA eligible, whether the town chooses.
Well, for historic preservation. Well, if it were old.
No, for housing.
Yeah. So if they get the affordable 500,000 for affordable housing, I don't see any chance of that just ate up all the oxygen in the room.
For the
for
CPA
one- for
housing
one-
allocation, yeah,
For
yeah.
one project that wasn't even on our radar screen.
Yeah, I think that,
can
you know,
find
and
out
Carrie
about
might
that.
have some update to that. You know, whether they, you know, Delia, we talked about maybe, you know, looking for other sources, so it's not all CPA. But
Yeah, but okay, thanks. And just to get back to the idea that I had about what a motion might look like.
oh,
It's,
gotcha.
the draft motion would be to have the select board vote pursuant to our bylaw to approve a policy statement for a proposed spending plan with 3 parts. One is by asking the select board to support the trust's budgeting of a total of X dollars to advance certain projects in the current fiscal year as they become ready to proceed, and by inviting funding applications from them. And then I would say that we would then, it's a specified project. So on this worksheet, it would be, all right, we'll pick the ones that you would want, the trust members that you would want us to invite to submit applications. And that would be 1A, 1B, 1C, as far as I can see, for from the CHDC, among others. But that was a way to send this, you know, the only signal we can that we would like to invite an application. I can't approve the application by, the trust cannot reasonably be asked to approve an application before the September 8th CPC deadline. We just can't. And I don't think you have the information that would be needed to get our approval. And by then, so
Keith, we've already,
you may only be able to submit an application everywhere.
Keith?
Yeah, Mike.
So this motion over here on the left, I think is fine. Here's my question. Is it necessary to specify the 3 categories that you have there are fine? Things that are ready to go, things that might be ready to go, and stuff that we want to encourage because of the housing production plan strategies. Those are all fine categories.
Yeah, actually, if I could, Mike, the 3rd category in the motion is actually something different. It's to have the select board encourage the trust to pursue
Additional funding. Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
My point is, and this list over on the right-hand side is a set of all of the projects that we know about that could fall into one of the first 2 categories. So what I'm concerned about is, do we need to specify a budgeting amount? So for example, in number 1, the language could read, by supporting the trust, budgeting trust funds to advance certain projects, et cetera, leaving out the dollar amount. And the same with, and at the bottom of number 1, it would just end and by inviting funding applications from those projects. And it wouldn't specify projects. And the same with the next category. And then, as if the select board could approve that, then our task becomes quite clear. Our task is twofold. Our task is to determine which of the projects belong in the various categories, and then to determine the amount of money that we could allocate to various categories, and then invite applications. And
yeah, this is Linda. I couldn't agree more with that. And, you know, one of the things I did after seeing all this wonderful material prepared was I went back and looked at the bylaws, and then I looked at how our agenda item is stated on the upcoming select board meeting agenda. And I guess my real concern was that we're seeking select board approval. And, you know, if you go back and look at the bylaws, again, albeit we want to be on the same page. We want to
Yeah.
know, where they're coming from. But I don't think our bylaws are saying that we're seeking approval. And by turning the motion and the potential full list of projects that we're aware of at this point and that coincide with the housing production plan, by adding the dollar amounts, we've now made policy statements that they're approving out of the dollar amounts and taken away the funding implementation role, which Mike so well articulated so well, from the trust. So I think there's the danger there, not and I like the positive way in which Mike phrased this, what we'd like to see included and not included.
Yeah. Here's the dilemma. What I asked for was the chance to brief the select board on the housing roundtable, which they were not able to attend, and to get their input. And I was told that I could only get agenda time if they actually have to take a vote, that they don't have time for discussions. So, and so that's why the agenda item says select board approving something. I didn't ask the select board to approve anything in asking for the time on their agenda. But the rules of engagement were that that agenda time is only available for votes, not for talk.
So, and the bylaws do commit us to going to the select board with policy consistent with HPP, correct? And so I have no difficulty with sort of summarizing that and letting them again vote on that, but I would take out any reference to funding.
Now, what kind of reference?
In number 1 and number 2. I just strike those where for a total of, strike that stuff, and then strike in the bottom of the first and second points, including from the specific projects. Those are our jobs, not the select board's job.
Okay, so well, that'll be an easier ask, although it might be tougher to get out of the room on Monday night. So we'd be looking for the select board to support the trust using its funds to advance projects and to set aside other amounts that will be necessary for projects that may be ready without mentioning the projects. Is that what you're saying?
It is what I'm saying, and I'm also saying we're just asking for their support.
Yes, yeah, and that actually might be a cleaner ask that we could actually discuss in 15 minutes, because had they actually made time for a discussion and their input, then I'm sure we would have heard feedback on particular projects. Someone's going to say, well, I don't like this one, or I do like that, or I do like that one. I would expect that we'll still hear that.
Well,
but
we can hear it, but it's irrelevant because it's not their judgment to make.
Are we going to move the projects on the right-hand side to the categories to share with the select board? Not yet.
No,
doesn't sound like the other members are willing to do that.
well, Keith, in addition to that, what it allows you to do is to clearly articulate what the trust will be doing. So you're asking on the left-hand side of your piece, you're asking the select board to support the trust in allocating funds for ready-to-go projects, for allocating funds or reserving funds for projects that may come up, and then encouraging the trust to pursue additional funding. That's what you're asking for. And in the select board approving or supporting this ask, it's very clear that you can articulate what the trust will then be doing. What the trust will then be doing is taking the right-hand side of your memorandum here and determining the cost and which category these various funds or these various projects fall into.
And which ones will be ready to go first, et cetera.
Right, and
Yeah.
but it really lays out clearly a roadmap for what the trust will be doing. And the first one of those is by inviting funding applications. So what we'll be doing is inviting funding applications. So I think this, if we can get get that out of there, and then just delete from a total of, up one more line, yeah,
Yep.
up there.
By supporting the trust in budgeting trust funds to advance.
Right.
Budgeting trust funds to advance certain projects.
Right,
Those
and
are-
then the same set of, and that down below, in the second one, you just need to add the word after trust in reserving. You need to add the word in
Yes, in reserving,
reserving
in
And then-
reserving,
and wipe out a total of. There we
right,
go. Perfect. Or get the N out of there too. There's the letter N between reserving and trust that needs to be
oh, yes, in reserving,
fixed out.
That makes more sense. I would echo what has already been said, that I do think there is some thought among certain select board members that they have to approve any expenditure of funding from the trust, and that is obviously not correct. I think the bylaw is very clear that if the trust were to commit future revenue sources, there's some involvement for the select board to approve, but not existing revenue.
right. Yeah, right, and I don't disagree with that, but I guess that in a world where we're asked to give them things that they can vote on to approve, we got to think of something. And while it would be preferable, and actually the commitment I think that I made to members of the Board of Selectmen in the aftermath of the late unpleasantness with Christopher Heights was that we're going to stay in communication with each other so something like that doesn't happen again. So for me, the real ask was to get on the select board agenda, because the chair couldn't be at, for whatever reason, last week's meeting, a roundtable, to make sure we're on the same page. Hey guys, here's the list of projects that are on our universe. This is our universe of projects that have been that are implementing, that are proposed by various town entities to implement housing production plan strategies. And so this is what we're going to be reviewing. If we could have had a discussion about it, I mean, I would have, from for CHDC's sake, I would have liked to have a situation where the select board can say, oh yeah, great, that looks great, go ahead, that sounds fine. But if we're not going to tell them particular projects, I don't know how we get that signal, except by saying, here's the list, and they can tell us, well, we really don't like this one, or
No, Keith,
yeah.
we're not asking them to give us their 2
Well,
cents.
they're going to tell you about the rental housing ones, because they're the ones that I'm being talked to about it.
That's fine. You could give examples of items on the right-hand side that would go into category 1 or category 2. You could give examples of from that list.
Right. So yeah. So I can include a universe of projects that are currently identified to us. Although it's incomplete, I would like to know, before I put it on this list, who's going to administer the Affordable Rental Housing Assistance Program. We're not. In fact, if it's going to go to the CPC, then I guess it's instead of the trust, then it will not be our business. So
I think the RHSO, and I think that was clear in the request, would administer it behind the town department. So, I mean, I
Who's
don't. know
the-
if
who's
that's an
the town
open question
department?
Or not, I mean, we do that for 5 different towns, so.
Yeah, who's the town department?
Well, it came from community services.
So if it's not a trust program, then it wouldn't be involved with the trust. So, however, you know, that's easy to work through, I think, yeah.
Okay, and can anyone tell me which housing production plan strategy is addressed by the Emergency Affordable Assistance Program?
I would assume it's the same strategy and goal that was listed there, in Bonnie's memo. I don't have the plan in front of me, but I think that you have that probably.
Yeah, no, I don't, well, I don't know that anybody sent me a memo about, I think Carlin sent me a memo about the Hugh Cargill Trust.
Bonnie sent a memo, I'm pretty sure
Well,
about.
she did on the rental assistance, not on the emergency assistance.
Well, that would be Carlin's memo, right?
Yeah, Carlin, go ahead.
And
Thank
we-
you. Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but speaking on my own behalf, yes, that was the intent of the memo that I submitted for the Emergency Affordable Housing Assistance Program to be funded, that portion through the Hugh Cargill Trust. It would be strategy number 14, and I believe it was also goal number, Liz, help me, it's the same one as what you submitted. Was that goal number 5 of the housing production plan? So yeah, strategy number 14.
Okay, thanks. And which strategy does the farmhouse bedroom addition? Is it an affordable unit? No, it's not.
What do you mean?
It-
SHI, yeah.
Not SHI, but I think the
It
intent
is,
is to create a restricted unit. Or
Okay, so you
two units, right?
all right, so you want to create SHI units? Okay,
No, not SHI.
no,
No, these would be moderate income units. I think that's the proposal, 100% AMI.
So that fits under community housing.
yeah, that's community housing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I just think, yeah, just think, keep my eye on this one now.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so strategy 3. Must be 3. Well, if I don't, I'll tell you, I don't think we have a strategy that doesn't create SHI units.
Let me just look and see, yeah.
The only one that doesn't is the supporting low, low income and elderly. So, and that's the other thing, because we're about implementing the housing production plan. And we are anyway, hopefully others are as well. But anyway, so it's to be housing strategy to be determined, I guess, based on whatever.
And that, Keith, under E, you want to get the question mark out of there after.
Oh, yeah, okay, is that, yeah, I guess I want to, I would ask Carrie, is that a yes, the Hugh Cargill Trust is going to administer it, or who?
well, it's actually Hugh Cargill Committee,
Committee.
but again, this is Carlin's proposal, but that's how I understand it.
Okay, well, at what point does the town decide what applications go in the town's name?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I can tell you, I know you asked that at the round table.
Yeah,
Our past practice has been that we have submitted, the departments have submitted applications and we have not prioritized them. I don't Not saying that's a good process, but
Yeah.
or practice, but that's what the practice has been.
Yeah.
But again, on E, it should be Hugh Cargill Committee, not Hugh Cargill Trust.
Thank you.
Is it Carrie, is it trust committee?
I don't think so. I mean, there is a Hugh Cargill Trust
Yeah, for sure.
and there's a committee.
Okay, that's
But
just,
since they haven't has the committee voted to say they're going to be administer it, or are they already administering such a program and they need more money? That's a question for Carrie.
Well, they do administer, they do provide emergency funding for a variety of reasons.
including rental.
Right.
And again, we don't need to resolve this. This is just the stuff that's in front of us. It doesn't need to be sort of actionable at this stage.
Right.
So get rid of the question mark there.
Okay, so we'll put it.
Just another little typo, if you go back to the other side, before you go to the numbers 1, 2, 3, there's an underline under the colon. I don't know, right, go down.
Oh, down further.
Up, okay, there's a underline under that colon, I don't know why, but
Yeah, because in my
you're editing.
in my draft minutes, the motion is underlined.
Ah.
Pasted it. So, because I'm working from multiple documents, and largely so that when our meeting ends, I can spend this evening finishing this memo to the select board, which tells them what we voted to do. So,
So can I just raise sorry, Mike, you
yeah,
had-
Linda.
No, I was
Just-
just,
Oh,
go ahead.
Linda.
okay. Just one other comment, and it has to do with what you said in explaining this. Yeah, this is a list of projects that we know about that are before us. The majority of which, or if not, the majority of which are mentioned in the HPP, which the board has already processed. But I would not say that we're exclusively about HPP, because I understood that we have the flexibility if other opportunities arise for affordable housing, that we can act on it.
Well, I tell you I sure want to get some policy direction from my appointing authority about that, because I'm of the understanding that these limited funds are our pact with ourselves is we're going to implement the housing production plan. And if we can't find it in there, we need to ask ourselves why, and get, I realize housing production plan is a
The reason I-
document that can be amended from time to time, but it would,
Yeah, a point well taken, but I
Yeah.
do recall in the HPP that there was language that said, or other land opportunity, or there were some ors.
yes,
So-
absolutely.
So
There's
this does not become exhaustive of
It-
what we might be able to address?
No, I would agree with that. I think it's probably strategies 3 and 4, which talk about sort of other units that could be, other places where SHI units could be created, or others that we would buy down units with developers or get them. And those things aren't specified. And I think that language for those two strategies is broad enough for us to take advantage of any reasonable opportunity that comes up. It's going to hit us in the face, and we're going to all look at it, selectmen too, and we're all going to shake our heads up and down and say, yep, that fits, and we're all going to know it when we see it. But I think that and that it fits within the housing production plan is what I mean. So
In looking at the housing production plan, I would say that the Barrett's Mill Farm, while there's not a strategy per se, I think that goals 2, 3, and 4 are inclusive of non-SHI units and increasing housing that is environmentally, to encourage environmental, pursuits, which the farming might qualify under. And that's what I would say. I would say
Okay,
goals
thanks.
2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, and 4, and I think you're right. And there's no particular strategy around those.
Yeah, and the same with rental housing assistance too, but I think it's in strategy 14 is clear enough that it's saying,
Yeah.
hey, whatever you can do to benefit low income and seniors, that's a worthwhile strategy. The issue with and I hear Kerry saying that the town's going to look for many places where they might get funds for housing for the farmhouse. Ironically, and I don't know how they do it, but on Nantucket, another community I give examples from, they have a Nantucket land bank which can only do open space and non-developable property, with which they spend money to buy golf courses and build housing for the employees who work at the golf courses. So go figure how that happens with open space money. So maybe, who knows, but
it's interesting that you bring that up about the the non-SHI units, and there's not much request for them now, but certainly this process is new. And I don't know that the housing production plan was looked at under that lens of, if it's not in the plan, it wouldn't be funded per se. I know that the town folks, right, have envisioned that the transfer fee, should that ever generate revenue, would be specifically to fund workforce housing. That was always part of the piece there. So that's something to think about for the future.
Right. And I think we're on exactly the same page there. And I'm glad you mentioned the transfer fee, because the world changes. Once the whole world changes, and what we can spend money on and what we should spend money on, because it's limited now. We have $3 million. Once that's gone, we have to go back to town meeting for more and explain ourselves. But once we get a dedicated funding source, then I would think that would be a call to do a quick amendment of the housing production plan to make sure we're all on the same page about how do we spend that amount of money, because that would be a great opportunity to pursue. But right now, and I feel strong about this, with the limited funds we have, and until we have a recurring funding source, I think our priority is the housing production plan per se. So that's just me. I'm going to ask if do we have, and I really appreciate the discussion, and don't want to keep folks much longer, because I think we have a strategy that allows us to go forward to the select board with an ask for, I would like them to approve a policy statement that reads like this on the left, because from a timing standpoint, actually the most important paragraph is the third one, because I want the select board to encourage the trust to apply for CPC funding and ARPA funding. I don't need guarantees of approval at this point; those can't be made anyway. But I think that that's the time-sensitive thing we've got to, that's coming up of July 8th, and the next motion after this one is to authorize filing an application. So I'm going to make this a little bigger and see on the screen and see if folks, if you can look at the left side of the screen. And are there any suggested edits to that motion before we ask for a mover and a second?
Keith, could I just ask again about item 1? Do we need a verb stronger than budgeting? like allocating.
Allocate,
approving.
Yeah, like that, yeah.
allocate, right, yeah.
Yeah, good. Permission to spend money, which we don't need, but which, not ask nicely because we're gonna need,
By supporting the trust in allocating.
Yeah.
Funds, so, and add in, and then get rid of the trust to the right of allocating.
yeah, okay.
All right.
In supporting the trust and allocating its funds. How about that?
Fine.
To advance certain projects, and I'm gonna put a semicolon there. And by supporting the trust and reserving funds,
Its funds,
its funds,
be consistent.
to advance projects anticipated to be ready to apply to the trust for funding later in FY 2025 and beyond. How about that, if we're gonna split it up this year? But how about by FY 25 and beyond? So the first one is the current year, current fiscal year. The second one is
Later than, not later by.
by funding, funding
In,
yeah, now I can say, because I took out,
Right.
yeah, it's gonna be later in FY 24, but okay, so that's out.
And I think I think you don't need the word "and" after the end of the first one. No, you need it there.
Oh, yes, indeed, yeah, okay.
And
right.
there's no reason for it to be italicized.
Okay. So are there further edits, or are we ready to have this motion?
I move to adopt the motion as presented. Or do you want it read?
No, that's okay. I will,
yep,
I could have the computer read it to you though, if you like, so,
second and then a discussion, please.
yes.
So, I just went, two. We possibly could get asked for funding in FY 24, so maybe we say 2024 and beyond.
Fine.
Okay, and, okay, so here in,
And since I don't think there was a second, I'm just going to amend my.
Yeah, I seconded it, yeah.
okay, so both,
Yes,
okay, so we have paragraph 1 says FY 24 and paragraph 2 says FY 24 and beyond. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion. And I'm still looking at my screen, at my the screen I'm sharing, so I'm just going to see, no, I don't see any other hands. All right, so on that motion, let's do a roll call. Linda,
Aye.
Mike,
aye.
Gary,
Aye.
aye. So that's unanimous 4-0. Very good. Well worth the time. So, and I appreciate what all the discussion. And what I will do is I will circulate before I go to bed tonight, and I'm planning on going to bed early. I will circulate the proposed form of a memo to the select board reporting this vote, and And I think I ought to attach something that so attach either an exhibit, should I attach this, the list of projects as an exhibit, or should I attach the longer worksheet? The 2-page worksheet, which has additional information. Maybe I'll do both.
I think you could include in your memo to the select board transmitting the motion, you could indicate that in addition, you have attached a list of all of the projects that
Okay.
are currently known to the trust.
Right.
As long as there's no reference to funding.
Yeah, with no dollar amounts. Okay, very good. Then I will I'll use this format of the list, which doesn't have dollar amounts attached to it as the list of our universe. Very good. Thank you. I would ask for so we'll proceed now to the next agenda item, which is authorized submission of trust applications to the CPC, to the Community Preservation Committee for CPA funding, and to the town for ARPA funding. And I guess I first want to ask, is it premature to Carrie, do we know yet what the format would be for how we would apply for ARPA funding? Should we do that later, or?
So we're still working on a very simple application, and we are hoping to launch that at the same time as our regular CIP process, which is the beginning of September. So I know that's only 10 days or so away, but I think right after Labor Day that will come out, and I don't know that this group will meet before then.
Okay. So perhaps, thank you. And so perhaps since we're here now and we have a quorum, why don't we just authorize the chair to submit an application on the trust's behalf to both CPC, and would the town's application go to whom? I wrote down the select board, but is it some other process that it goes to?
The ARPA would come to me.
Okay.
So I guess I have a conflict. I won't be able to
Right.
have to work through that.
Right. Very good. Okay, well, somehow you're able to find a way to sign our grant agreement, or the trust, you and I were the signatories on the CPC grant agreement, so very good. All right, so just so that we have, and I guess I want to say two things. I know I'm going to need some help putting in. I don't really like to do grant applications. I have to say I never did them. I had an assistant town manager who did them, or I had a grant administrator who did them. I just thought of what we should apply for, and I really don't like applying for grants. And since we don't have, so I'd say either can we have would we be the only committee like this that's applying, that has its members submitting the application, or is it trust? Is there some staff that could be assigned to work with us to help, or? So anyway, that's an issue for me.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. So let me just think about that a little bit. Because I don't know that it's going to be an extensive application, and certainly we have staff to support the committee. But as you know, we haven't necessarily identified one staff person to support the committee all the time.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that, and that. So for tonight, maybe to get an authorizing vote to. Or vote to authorize the chair to submit the applications to CPC and to the trust. I'm sorry, and to the town. Is there a dollar amount that we want to request? Members? Because I need to fill in a dollar amount in the application.
Well, I thought we had some previous conversation about ARPA that we would request the 500 consistent with our 500K, consistent with our previous free cash request.
I like,
Um,
yep.
Our the CPC request is a little trickier.
Yeah, I think with the CPC that it could be that that I have every expectation that when the CPC looks at competitive applications, they'll decide how far they can go, and that they've done that routinely in the past. That's why over time I'm told that they split up projects. How much do you need this year? Come back next year, and although I would like to be thoughtful about how we apply it. I mean, now I find myself in the position that Liz was in a moment ago. I want to apply for $500,000 to somebody who's going to fund it. That's the person I want to apply to, right? So,
So take up for a moment, this is one way to think about it, I think. Take ARPA out of the equation at this point. What are you thinking about in terms of your request to CPC?
$500,000 for units to be added to the SHI, which is, by the way, what the requirement is for the $1 million that we got from CPC this year, that it specifically limits what we can spend it on to 80% of AMI, so that they can get counted. So I'd want to ask for that, and I'd want and along the lines of what Lee suggested to Burton was to float the idea that the grant of the total funds could be subject to CPC's review of individual requests for particular projects. And I actually foresee that that's going to be a long conversation that we could get to have. Did I see a hand, Mike? Linda.
If I could just quickly follow up on your last statement. Again, this was how I heard the conversation the other night. When you add the phrase subject to their opportunity to review the specific requests that might come in for SHI, I think the retort was, that request could directly come to us. So I'm not sure that's adding that strengthens the request, is my point.
Yes, although I also read that same comment that I heard as meaning, well, don't come to us. The offer was to have essentially 2 boards review it, and I say, well, that's 1 board too many. Just don't come to us. Don't come back to us for the money. So I don't know. Maybe we just ask for it. Ask for the money, and the CPC will figure out under what terms can they offer it or not, and we have to resolve that issue.
So where we don't have a specific project that we would be putting forward to CPC, we're just looking for general funding for future projects,
Yes.
which I would assume is not particularly compelling to them when they're going to be faced with specific projects.
Right.
What if we just ask them for the 10% for housing, which is, I don't know, it's $180,000 or something, and look to ARPA, or I know, Keith, you mentioned a few times no free cash. I think it's too early to say there's no free cash, but
Maybe
do you think
I was thinking there's no free lunch.
There's no free lunch. I just wonder if that's a more compelling case we'll just take the 10%.
I was thinking along similar lines. Could our application to CPC be a contingent application? And by that I mean, if the CPC does not have projects during the current cycle that is going to fund under housing, then our request is to set those monies aside in the trust so that we can act in a manner that's appropriate and more quickly than they could if we have to wait for another funding cycle. So is there a possibility that our request could be, what if we have a good application for a large amount of money from one of our housing folks? We don't want to get in there and be competitive with them. So I don't know what the CPC would think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I that before this farmhouse raised its head, I wouldn't have been concerned at all, but I'm concerned about all of the money that the CPC might have given us, said going to put an addition on a farmhouse.
But
And that's just for the
But,
house.
you can always put in and you can always withdraw your CPC application too, right? I mean, that's always, it's not the ideal strategy, but with all these unknowns.
But if you couched it the way I mentioned, Liz, I don't think it would be quite as bad if you put the application in and then wacko, there's a bunch of really good housing proposals from the other housing agencies, you pull theirs, you pull ours.
Or pull it or reduce, right? They never want you to increase.
Yeah,
So, so if
Except
you went a little high and you could always reduce to the
except last
10%
year
or
when
something.
except last year when they went back to the CHTC to increase.
Yeah, but that was unusual because of the Junction Village piece and all of that. But I would say that's most unusual, but whatever. We're in different times and who knows, and you're different. This whole situation is different. So
well, I guess
there's always that to put in and then.
How do we feel about maybe what we should look at is what's our fundraising target from these two sources? Is it 500,000? Would we be fine if somewhere between the two, CPC and ARPA, it adds up to 500,000 and we could just tell the agencies, we could tell the CPC and the town that our fund, if you will, our fundraising goal for this coming town meeting is to be able to add $500,000 to the trust fund. Just an approach, and we can work it out with the two application processes. Maybe we'll get some from one and some from another, or maybe we'll get all of it from one and none from the other.
Yeah, my concern about asking for the 10% per se is that often the trust has gone over well over the 10%, and so it has the potential of sending the wrong message and limiting the other requests that go in that could still benefit affordable housing.
But it only goes over the 10%, Linda, when there's projects. I mean, I don't
Correct. No, that's correct.
CPC ever just allocating it. See, my concern is that the CPC, if it doesn't have a project for housing, they're still obligated to put 10% in a reserve.
Correct.
And I think that's something we want to avoid. If there's projects, hooray for those. But if they're not funding up to the minimum, we want to get that money out of the CPC cycle into our hands so that we can act more quickly rather than wait for another funding cycle. So my approach was I'd get as much as I could from ARPA, and then I would make sure that in the absence of SHI funding opportunities through CPC, we wind up having the funds transferred to us so that we can act more quickly.
For the minimum amount of funds, yeah.
And and Liz is probably right, that kind of seems like kind of a weaselly application, but. Carrie, do you know if the town is going to support the farmhouse addition?
Well, under the process that we followed before, we've submitted anything that came up through a department. I can tell you, I'm struggling with this one because, and I appreciate, Liz, you said you've been working on it for 6 months. I feel like just before the roundtable was the first time it was mentioned to me. So I wasn't aware of it for that long. And I think that property, we just renewed the lease, and I don't know, we might have had more people interested in the property if it was going to be a different unit that was available, and the town might have got a better deal out of it. So I'm sort of struggling with that one, just as one person, but it would be unusual for us not to advance an application that was brought up through a department.
As I understand that, but historically, the select board has reviewed all CPC applications and forwarded to the CPC their recommendations, the projects they thought were of the highest priority. Is that practice still continuing?
Yes, but we would be bringing everything to them, and I'm not sure well, I don't know, maybe Linda or Mike, you know better than I do how much discussion the board has had, or, have they not allowed something to go forward, or they've just identified their highest priorities.
My recollection is we were not in a position to stop an application according to CPC. It's none of our business, but we could certainly indicate, since CPC is supposed to be advancing the town, our view on what projects were worthy of their attention. At least that's my recollection.
Right. It's all just easier. Well, if we can just urge Carrie to be the applicant for all of them, and then she can decide which one she withdraws. So, but anyway,
Do you want a motion to allocate?
yeah, if we had,
Authorize, I mean.
yeah, authorize and I would like some direction on, the dollar amount that should be included in how much should be applied for to the CPC and how much should be applied for ARPA. And I agree with for starters, I agree with the $500,000 for ARPA funding, that we ought to do that. And so for purposes of a motion, could I get one that fills in the number for the CPC? And then you put the number on the table for the CPC, and then also include $500,000 for the town ARPA funding.
Could it be Weasley, like I move that we authorize the chair to apply for ARPA fundings to the town manager in an amount not to exceed $500,000, and for the chair to provide an application to the CPC for affordable housing not to exceed $500,000. Is that too Weasley?
Well,
Weasley enough?
with that, I'll be submitting $500,000 because I don't have.
That's fine, because we can, if it turns out, as Liz said, if it turns out that all of a sudden there's some really cool applications in the for the CPC, then we can either pull our application or reduce our request.
Yeah, I like that approach, and what it does is it gives us a seat at the table with the CPC as their process goes forward. And who knows, maybe something will happen, and that that one of the projects on the radar screen here happens. It's not going to need the cash before July 1st. And gee, wouldn't it be nice if although let me say, well, forget about that example because those projects aren't submitting applications. But for the Assabet, I'm not sure who else is submitting an application by September 8th. Is the Housing Authority submitting 400,000? No. And well, Stefan says no.
No,
No.
no.
No, because your application can't be, you're still working on the idea and the application can't be ready in 2 weeks.
Well, I think that also with the CPA applications, you can go in with a little softer application because you really have until, I don't know, like, all the way through till February, March to refine and to continue to evolve the materials. I'm just saying. So,
That's helpful insider advice because I didn't know.
right, because you put it in, I mean, like whatever, the first
Mike's
hearing is until
way.
November in this, so, I'm just saying.
No.
So the other thing that's not on your sheet, and I don't know whether, just so that that the CPA application for the RHSO fee, membership fee will also be in, it's.
Oh, yeah,
low.
33,
What we're talking about.
yeah, good, yeah, point well taken, the 33, yeah, that's so much on.
I gotta do the numbers for FY 25, whatever. next
RHSO
week.
33,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
Okay, so sounds like Mike's motion is to authorize the chair to apply it for 500,000 each from CPC and ARPA. Is that, do I have a second?
Second,
Second by Linda. Motion by Mike, second by Linda. Is there further discussion?
you
All right.
typically send a draft, right?
Oh, yeah. In fact, what I was thinking of is that we may even want to meet 2 weeks from tonight to look at it.
Good idea.
So, because I would feel a lot more comfortable about that process.
Okay.
Authorize the preparation of a application, and then I would like us to meet if we're available Tuesday, September 5th at 5 p.m. to finalize the grant agreement, the CPC grant agreement due September 8th.
Then maybe that could just be our only agenda item and you could
Yeah.
send the draft out early.
Does that time work for you, Carrie? Day after Labor Day,
Yeah,
the
it does.
long weekend followed by a short work.
That's the only day that week that works for me.
Okay, all right. So we'll do that. Great. So with that, let's do let's have a vote on the motion to authorize those 2 grant applications. Linda,
Aye.
Mike,
I
Gary,
I
and Keith, aye. So that's 4-0. Very good. So public comment. Yes, public, member of the public, Stefan Bader.
Stefan Bader, 7 River Street, speaking for myself, not necessarily for the Housing Authority, because the Housing Authority has not met to discuss this. I was just going to throw out that for your purposes of asking for money, the $500,000, which is what was allocated to affordable housing for 4 years in a row, I think everyone will tell you you'd need $600,000 to buy the same amount of housing today as you did 5 years ago, between construction and labor and materials costs. I don't know of anything that hasn't gone up close to 20% in that time frame. So I think I like Mike's approach to ask for 502 places, and I would not be worried about 600 being too much.
Right. Oh, thanks for that, and that gives me inspiration to apply, you know, to accept even more than 500,000 if it comes to us. So thank you. Other public comment. Thanks for others for being with us. So our next meeting, the trust will be on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Silence.
I'll move.
Okay, Mike moves.
Second,
Linda, second. They just didn't want it. They didn't want to leave, and my dinner is right over there. So, on that motion to adjourn, roll call vote. Linda,
aye.
Mike,
Aye. Goodbye, everyone.
thank you. Carrie,
Aye.
Keith, aye.
Bye,
And
everybody.
thank you all. We are adjourned at 6:30 p.m. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.